The government's top coronavirus vaccine developer is now out with a whistleblower complaint against the government, making clear a number of different issues that he had, both during the coronavirus response and leading up to it, with cronyism and corruption and incompetence and ignorance. And it's available online, the 63-page complaint. We're not obviously going to cover all of it, but there are a few highlights from what Rick Bright said that I think it's important that you see. And understand that he'd worked up until recently at the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. It'll be called BARDA from now on. But so he was an insider in this response, one of the top insiders, and here's a few of the things that he says. On April 22nd, Bright alleged in a fiery statement that he had been sidelined because he, quote, resisted efforts to fund potentially dangerous drugs promoted by those with political connections. One of the drugs was the malaria medication hydroxychloroquine. Bright said he had rightly resisted efforts to provide an unproven drug on demand to the American public, and we're going to have a little bit more details on that in just a moment, but a bit more from the complaint. According to it, Bright's superiors at the Department of Health and Human Services began pressuring him to ignore expert recommendations and instead to award lucrative contracts based on political connections and cronyism starting around the spring of 2017. So this is not just during the epidemic. This is in the years leading up to it. We have an example of that sort of cronyism. Last fall, Bright, quote, rejected pressure by Dr. Kadlec to invest millions of dollars in a drug developed at Emory University by a longtime friend of Dr. Kadlec, presented as a miracle cure for influenza, Ebola, and nearly every other virus, even though the developer had not yet conducted clinical trials and no data had been compiled to demonstrate either the efficacy or safety of the drug in humans. But that wasn't going to stop them from sending millions of dollars to someone that they knew and wanted to support. And so we're going to have more, but Emma, I know that you did a video about this whistleblower complaint, so give me some of your thoughts.
It's just, what sticks out to me most is how Trump's incompetence and his kind of ADD when it comes to dealing with this pandemic, where he can't focus on a larger goal and do what's necessary, like more testing, more supplies, more masks, all of that, how that kind of, his tentacles extend into the other parts of the government here, where basically it wasn't just him pontificating on the podium about hydroxychloroquine and that miracle drug there. It was being felt in terms of what was being done in the government. Mm-hmm. And this is why this whistleblower spoke out. He had been speaking out, as you mentioned before, on the administration's lack of effort when it comes to dealing with coronavirus leading up to this. But really what broke the camel's back here was that hydroxychloroquine was not being tested. We found out later in a VA study that it may have no effect. In fact, it may have negligible or negative effects on patients who are dealing with coronavirus. And he had tried to speak out about that, and he was demoted. Mm-hmm. And so these government agencies are operating as if Trump would operate. And so when we talk about like good people in the government that still remain, I don't know how many people there are there, because this seems to be exactly as how Trump would behave if he were directly in charge of, Health and Human Services and all of the agencies there.
Exactly. Yeah. The new people that are put in are loyalists above all else. And the people who remain, if they weren't loyalists, he's been weeding them out since the very beginning. There might be a few left. Fauci's still allowed to occasionally tell the truth.
And even Dr. Burps, though, I feel like we don't talk enough about how she seems to be parroting a lot of what Donald Trump says. I don't know if you have talked about it, but I feel like it's not discussed. You have. But people are always like, oh, Fauci and Birx. Like, no, there's one guy. There's one lone soldier left.
When she like a month ago was like, I just have to say, he really pays attention to all the scholarship and he's a mind for numbers. And I was like, no, you're not a serious person. Nobody actually thinks that. You're lying to me.
I don't trust women wearing light scarves like that. Those scarves look too expensive and, spend your money elsewhere.
That is the standard I will now use. So really fast, a little bit more from the complaint, and this takes us up to the pandemic. In a January 23rd meeting, Bright demanded urgent access to funding, personnel, and clinical specimens necessary to develop life-saving medicines for use in a possible pandemic. He was met with reassurances from HHS brass that the virus's spread was under control, according to the complaint, which is what we were hearing publicly, by the way. Bright was unable to get Cadlick, the doctor we talked about before, and HHS to take the threat seriously, the complaint states, leading a prominent N95 mask manufacturer to write to Bright saying, "Rick, I think we're in deep S." And that was in the end of January. Now look, is it possible that he's exaggerating the extent to which he took it seriously when others didn't? Maybe, but it looks like he's got some documentation of his efforts to try to get them to take it seriously, and all of these mitigation efforts. Even just the lowest bar is making PPE available. We knew that we needed that, and they didn't want to help with it, and they resisted it for literally months up until basically today.
That's what's most terrifying about this, is that not only are they lackeys for the Trump administration, the leadership at HHS and other government agencies, it seems like, which is extremely scary. It's also that they behave as if they're a marketing arm for Trump Inc. Because it's not to prepare the country for a pandemic. It's not to get the necessary supplies in place. No, it's just to say, I see nothing, I hear nothing, everything's going great, and Donald Trump is doing a wonderful job in preparing the country for the pandemic. That's just not the reality, and that's not your job. Your job is to make tangible improvements to our infrastructure so we can prepare for this. But it goes to show, that's what this whistleblower has revealed, that they weren't behaving like that. They were a part of the PR department for Donald Trump.
Yeah, we know that he cares about ratings more than, one, anyone on TV, and two, more than anything else he cares about, and that philosophy has trickled down. It's the one thing other than urine that does trickle down, actually, is a belief that ratings and optics are the most important thing. I personally think that your ratings would be better and the optics would be better if you didn't create a situation where thousands of Americans were dying needlessly from a virus we had a month's head start on. They decided to go in a different direction.
Yeah, it's just, they can't think ahead. There's no foresight. It's just cleaning up the next mess and cleaning up the next mess, and not in a way like it's like putting a Band-Aid on a leaky pipe. It's just to make it look better, although that would look kind of dumb. But
yeah, it could still trickle out of a leaky pipe with a Band-Aid potentially.
Right. Well, but that's the point in this terrible metaphor, is that exactly. the negative effects are still being felt, but as long as the perception is that the negative effects are stymied, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. And well, and they're just, like, as you're going to see, I guess we're going to transition it to it now, but thousands of deaths, that's not so bad. That's a crazy thing to say, but that's what you're getting on Fox News and out of Donald Trump literally every day. Laura Ingraham was back again like a day or two ago saying social distancing, there's no scientific basis for that. No
scientific basis. I covered it. I got so angry.
There's no reason that someone shouldn't sneeze in your face scientifically.
It's so obvious that it's insulting, and she knows it. She knows. There's no chance she doesn't know that, what would help a disease not spread is if people weren't in large crowds. No scientific basis for that extremely common sense fact.
Yeah, it's like I said on the show yesterday, we now have to defend the germ theory of disease. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.